Hey guys, taking a with a video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to talk about the iPhone 6s Plus in mid 2023 and if it's still worth it or not. So the iPhone 6s Plus, not to get confused with the regular iPhone 6 Plus or the 6s itself, this S here represents the 6s Plus here, which is the bigger form of the phone of the 6 here lineup here. Now this phone has made quite of a run. Now it's going to be hitting 8 years in a couple months in September, since it was released in September of 2015. So you'll find a lot of amazing things about this phone, and the reason why we're going to discuss, well, what makes this phone great. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit more about kind of some of the facts about the iPhone 6s Plus. So right off the bat, you can see the 6s Plus here comes with a couple things here. The feature of this body that you have is a 5.5-inch display here. It has a 12 megapixel single camera on the back here, and then a 5 megapixel front camera here. So camera wise, it's pretty good in that term. Now the chip hardware on it, it's a Apple A9 chipset with 2 gigs of RAM, and when it comes to storage, you can get this phone at the maximum of 128 gigs. So maximum storage 128 gig, which is sort of the base for most of the newer iPhones now, but in the past that was the maximum amount of storage you can get on this phone. And then finally, talking about a little bit about the battery size on this one is around a 2750 mAh, which roughly equates to at 100% about 10 hours of battery life. But at 81% like this one, of course, over time that's not going to be true. It's going to be more like 6 to 7 hours of battery life, and also depends on sort of the user that you are. If you're a heavy user, expect of course like 5-6 hours. If you're pretty much a light user, you'll probably get that 10 hours or so on standby and such. And the other thing about this phone is that right now, if you're using it, of course the basic functionality is still possible. So if you're looking to make calls, you won't have any issues. When it comes to texting, you get all the features of pretty much what you would get on most iPhone devices. You get that iMessage and the whole FaceTime experience as well. Even when it comes to things like browsing here, as you'll notice here, on a good Wi-Fi and cellular data, you do have to wait a few seconds or so, but you'll be able to kind of browse at your leisure as well here. So those are kind of a couple things that we wanted to mention here. But one of the important aspect of the design of the body of the iPhone 6s Plus, you might notice, is that 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, which again, a lot of people, when that was removed, kind of complained because of the soundless audio that you would get, which is tough to get with the lightning port. Now these have phenomenal speakers here as well here, and it's a really light, compact phone. So again, with that iconic home button, which makes this phone pretty much stylish for most people when it came out, and the right sides because of that 5.5-inch display, and it just fits really well. Now if you're comparing this phone, most likely you're going to be comparing it to the iPhone 14 Pro Max if you look at the latest comparison of this device. Now let's go back to the next point, which is the software of this device. Now this iPhone 6s Plus and the 6s, which made quite of a run, is that when we saw the 6 iOS update on it. So from this phone, it the most you can update it is to up to iOS 15, and right now we're on iOS 16, so it's behind one major update. You do get these important security updates that Apple still pushes out, but no longer, you'll not be able to upgrade to iOS 16. And later this year, when iOS 17 comes out, you won't be able to get iOS 17 either. So in that term, of course, the software has stopped, but the security updates are there. Now let's talk about the software itself. You'll notice here most apps that we have, most popular apps, you'll be able to download, whether it's for your entertainment purposes or watching YouTube videos. As you'll notice here, when you open up an app, simple as YouTube, for example, that we're on, it does take a little bit, a moment before it can start to load up and you start seeing the content here. But you do have just a little bit of patience and it start rolling. And that's because, of course, the phone is almost 8-year-old phone now. So expect, of course, the hardware has aged over time. But surprisingly, you'll see here most popular apps are still supported on iOS 15. Here and there, what we notice here is something that I wanted to show you, is that sometimes when you do download apps, because it requires a newer version of the app, it will download an older version, which you'll get this message. It does allow you to download, but then there are cases in that where apps will absolutely not download, which are some of the newer apps that are meant to be on iOS 16. So that's key there, is the newer apps might not be supported, but generally for the most users, most of the popular apps that you use will be supported. So you do want to check out, if you're buying the iPhone 6s or have the 6s and you're looking for a particular app, check that it's compatible by going on to Apple Store and check out on itself, it will tell you what version of iOS is required. So if you go click on any app, for example, here I have TikTok here in the App Store here, it does tell you exactly where, if it'll work and what iOS is needed. As you can see, TikTok, for example, requires iOS 11 or later. Some of them might say requires iOS 16 or later. In that case, the 6S Plus here will not support that app. So finally, to conclude, is the iPhone 6S Plus worth it, you might ask, in 2023 and hitting that 8-year mark? Well, a couple things here are pretty much straightforward answer is that it might not be worth it because of a couple reasons for you. So it is an outdated phone because Apple is no longer supporting the major update, software update itself. The battery, again, isn't the greatest. It does have a big battery, but when it comes to battery life, getting that 10 hours or so at a full maximum capacity just doesn't seem like enough, especially nowadays when you have some of the iPhone 13 Pro Max, the 14 Pro Max, which gives you almost 24 hours of battery life. So that's another thing to consider. And of course, when it comes to the overall hardware here, the 6S again has aged, and it's time for, if you're looking to play heavier graphic games or if you're trying to multitask a lot, I recommend something newer for you to kind of go into. So what do we do kind of say for the iPhone 6S Plus? If you still have it and you're still using it, great. If you're thinking about a cheaper option alternative, the iPhone 6S Plus, because right now if you buy it, most likely it's going to be pre-owned from eBay or Amazon. You get it under $100 or so. It's a good buy. Now you can think about the iPhone, maybe even an 8 Plus, but 8 Plus, as we know, might not get iOS 17 updates. So what I recommend, if you're considering a newer phone, but a user phone, that would be for you probably iPhone 12 Pro Max or 13 Pro Max, which, you know, you don't pay the full premium of a 14 Pro Max, but those are something that you should consider if you're thinking about a phone for a couple of years. But the 6S Plus here, again, probably be good for until pretty much apps are no longer supported, but for temporary time being, the iPhone 6S Plus, again, a good choice if you're going to be looking for a really cheap phone or if you're currently using it. But I recommend you probably don't get this device and look for something newer. So that's kind of it for our review of the iPhone 6S Plus in 2023. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful, and check out other video on the different iPhones that we have in our channel. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.